Hi, my name's Edward Watson, Product Marketing Manager at Veeam Software, and I'm joined by my co-presenter here, Karinne.
Hi, I'm a technologist here on the product strategy side at Veeam.
And we're excited that you join us here today to talk about why Office 365 Backup is essential for remote workers. So we've got a great topic lined up for today. We've got a great agenda, so let's dive straight into it. So first, we're going to cover the acceleration we're seeing. We're obviously seeing some pretty unprecedented changes as far as the O365 adoption goes. Then we're going to switch gears into why Office 365 Backup is so essential, especially for remote users today. We're going to cover the shared responsibility model. What's your responsibility in terms of O365? And then we're going to deep dive into retention policies that come out of the box, and then cover how Veeam solution works, a Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, and then Karinne's actually going to do a live kind of dangerous demo. We're going to pray the demo gods are with us today, and then we're going to wrap up with a Q&A. So first, to kind of level set, who is Veeam, right? What do we do? So Veeam came out back in the early virtualization days as kind of the very first to market for backing up virtualized types of environments, right? So the Hyper-V and vSphere environments, later encompassing physical workloads as well as cloud-based workloads, and also software as a service, of course, Office 365, all under one pane of glass platform, combining monitoring, analytics, orchestration, backup and replication, of course, our flagship product, and universal storage APIs. And speaking of storage, we have a very wide ecosystem of partners, especially when it comes to cloud, dealing with Microsoft Azure, Azure Blob Storage, AWS, Amazon S3, IBM Cloud. Obviously, under each of these, we have many, many different partners. And of course, now object storage is now a big focus for us as well as our alliance partners. Looking at some of the numbers here, we've got quite a few stats we really love to share with the audience here. 76% of the global 2,000 are Veeam customers. 160 countries, 4,500 employees, 365,000 customers worldwide, $1 billion in revenue, and we're also very proud of our NPS score, which is basically how likely a customer would be to recommend Veeam to a peer of theirs. And you can see that we have 75 score NPS, putting us alongside the very best organizations in the world. So again, these are just a few stats for you to become familiar with Veeam. And diving straight into really the topic today, we obviously know there's an unprecedented change happening, right? I don't think I need to point that out. That remote workers, really driving that increase. You know, we're all being forced to make changes to our daily lives, and certainly there is this massive adoption taking place. Most notably, 12 million Teams users added in a single week alone, right? So absolutely amazing growth. These are difficult times, challenging times, but of course we as the IT community embrace those changes and want to make sure we enable our organizations the best way we can. 44 million Microsoft Teams active users now to date. Again, just fantastic growth there. But of course, there are risks with this new environment, and Karinne's going to cover some of these risks.
Yeah, with this wide adoption and how accelerated this adoption happened, we may kind of forget that we're going to be working with more remote devices, especially with Office 365. I have it on my tablet, I have it on my phone, I have it on my desktop, and probably a couple laptops. There are so many more access points from these remote devices. And we have to consider that a lot of these remote devices are bring your own type of devices, which means they're not on your company network. You're not required to do any type of patching, even when it's critical security patches on your personal devices, which are still using those credentials to access your business data. So being aware that your end users need to be educated to update and patch their systems is critical when we move over to all of these remote devices. And then when it comes to the home life, when you're working with home routers, it's usually without a physical firewall, and without a firewall with the proper and optimal connections that you would see in a business building, meaning that these are open to a lot more types of attacks than you might find in the office. And of course, there's that public Wi-Fi. It's just a breeding ground for all kinds of attacks, and we've known this for a long time. Being mindful to use things like VPN is going to become critical now. And that takes us into the 6 reasons why.
Absolutely. So obviously, we've laid the groundwork here. We are dealing and operating in a much different environment than we have previously. So in addition to all of the complexity and all of the changes that are taking place, we do have these reasons why Office 365 backup is so important. So starting with accidental deletion, accidents happen, right? But accidents don't matter as much. The deletion doesn't matter as much. It's more what happens after that deletion has happened, right? Am I able to recover that data in the way that I need to, when I need to get that data back, right? So there are retention windows that come out of the box in Office 365, and if you fall out of those windows, then of course there's data loss that occurs. And that really stems from thinking something's protected when it's not, which is reason number 2, retention policy, confusion, and gaps. And we're going to dive deeper into these retention policies, and so you fully understand how these work. There's internal security threats, right? The internal employees that may want to cause a little bit of havoc before they move on to their new job. And sometimes there's more innocent things that can happen where perhaps there's a salesperson who's just been trained to delete documents and files they were working with before they depart. So there can be more malicious things that happen internally, as well as more innocent things as well, innocent mistakes that are still mistakes nonetheless that can lead to some pretty bad consequences. External security threats, we all know these, right? These ransomwares of the world, rogue apps, the really dangerous things that we hear about in the market that we certainly don't want to become victims of. Legal and compliance requirements, that's another big thing for us. Are we able to find exactly the file or document that we need when we need to? For compliance reasons, right? Can we find the needle in a haystack for our compliance officer or HR officer to make sure that we can adhere to those compliance needs? And then, of course, in addition to all the other complexities we talked about, there is, of course, that management of hybrid environments, which also can cause a little bit of additional complexity, headaches to deal with. But of course, it's all about streamlining data protection policies, about streamlining all of these complexities so that things are much easier for you as the IT department. So how often do these reasons really happen? We've talked about these reasons. User error accidental deletion, 37%, actually the highest there. Security threats, of course, made the list at 18. And retention policies, is it myth, is it legend? Well, it does happen, 19% there. So these things really do happen. These really are concerns when you have workloads in the cloud. There is data loss that occurs there. 6 out of 10 organizations are unprotected. So this is actually a stat from IDC where they pointed out that things like backup, things like recoverability, search governance are simply an afterthought. These aren't for 6 out of 10 organizations. So hopefully, if you are the 6 out of the 10 and you're listening today, the information in this presentation does help you out and help you understand why you do need to take the next steps for that backup and recoverability of the data. So now we're going to switch gears and, we've explored the reasons, but why do I need a backup? This is the #1 question we get from customers, partners, internal Veeam employees, right? Why doesn't Microsoft take care of this? And ultimately, this might be your perception that the infrastructure, the data are all under one umbrella, right? That this Office 365 environment, Microsoft takes care of it, but ultimately, this is kind of a tale of 2 responsibilities. So the first responsibility is Microsoft's, which of course is the uptime of the infrastructure. They do a wonderful job at that. Of course, they make sure the service is provided, they keep the lights on, make sure there's a fully redundant system with replication across data centers. While your responsibility as the customer is, of course, the data and making sure that that's available to you. You have control over that data for long-term and short-term needs. And we're actually going to cover a framework that Microsoft provides, which is the shared responsibility model, and Karinne's going to cover that for us here.
Yeah, the shared responsibility model is the chart for what Microsoft has all of their cloud offerings under for who is responsible for what part of the components. When we're working with Microsoft Office 365, we're looking at software as a service. And as a software as a service component, they're responsible for, again, that infrastructure. They're responsible for the fault tolerance zones, geolocated data, and making sure that you have a recycling bin. But past that, you're responsible for your data and the retention of that data, meaning that if a group of files have been deleted and it's outside of their recycling bin or their hard delete cycle, then they're no longer responsible for recovering that data for you, meaning that you would have to have a backup of that data. So again, security, physical layer, networking, making sure the application server is available for authentication of your users is all on the role of Microsoft, but the ownership of that data is 100% in the customer's hands.
And ultimately, without a backup of that data, you do fall victim to a lot of the vulnerabilities we've already discussed, right? Whether that's limited access and control over that data, you may fall victim to regulatory exposures. There could be some security vulnerabilities, as well as retention policy gaps, thinking something's protected when it's not. So definitely keep the shared responsibility model in mind moving forward. And retention policies.
Yeah, diving a little deeper into those retention policies and what we were talking about with that recycling bin feature, we come into the concept of what's called a soft and a hard delete. And that's a Microsoft term for soft delete, means that it's in that retention for a period of time, which you see in the bluish color to the left. But to the right of that, in almost the mint green color, we see what's called the hard delete cycle. This hard delete cycle is the period of time where that data has been permanently deleted, where you're no longer able to access it in a form to bring it back to your production environment. Now, what we find is a lot of data loss versus when you realize that you're going to need to recover that data is within 140 days mark and well past that 30-day retention that they've been responsible for that data. This doesn't just include email boxes, SharePoint, and OneDrive, but you have to consider when an employee leaves your company. Because if you go in and, like a responsible administrator, revoke all access for that user, maybe remove the account so that they're unable to access your system, you may have also deleted all of that information inside of their account. Meaning if they come back for any type of lawsuit a month or two later, you have nothing for an e-discovery process to maybe mitigate some type of legal confrontation with this employee. And it's critical to keep and archive this data, not just for compliance and regulation, but protection of yourself and your company. And with Veeam, we're able to go ahead and extend that retention policy, keeping an extra copy of your data and helping fill those retention policy gaps.
Absolutely. Now we're going to dive into how Veeam does Office 365 backup with Veeam Backup from Microsoft Office 365. And ultimately, we've discussed all of these vulnerabilities. What this product does is actually eliminate the risk of losing that data, whether that's Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, or even Teams, really giving you flexibility in the storage location where you back up where you send that backup to, whether that's on premises, whether that's to object storage, perhaps, ultimately giving you protection against those risks we discussed. But a backup's, one thing, restore is quite another. Restore is still very important. We give you many different restore options. We're going to be exploring those in a bit, as well as helping you meet legal and compliance requirements. So these are kind of the three core aspects of the product here. In addition, we have community.
Yeah, our community edition allows you to back up 10 users for their Office 365 data, whether it's email, OneDrive, or SharePoint, and be able to experience all of our functionality for up to 10 users.
And, you know, we're constantly innovating on this product. The last version, version 4, the most recent version, I should say, it contains object storage support. So we know that many organizations today are, you know, moving to the cloud, are becoming cloud first and cloud minded, right? So this actually is specifically designed for those cloud first companies who want to deploy directly in the cloud and leverage all the benefits of object storage. Even if you have an on-premises environment to date, again, many companies are not even wanting to deploy on-premises anymore. They can simply leverage the cloud, take advantage of all the aspects of object storage from reduced costs, leveraging unlimited scalability, and simplifying deployments for storing all of this data, whether that's S3, Azure Blob, or S3 compatible storage providers. Now we're going to dive into the fun stuff. This is how it works. Take it away, Karinne.
Yeah, this is just a little bit about the architecture and what we're sitting on. In the middle to the left here, you can see Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. We're not only able to back up in the cloud, but we're able to also back up your on-premises environment as well, and any type of hybrid configurations, meaning you're not going to need multiple software to download one organization. And then we're able to be very flexible in the types of storage that we send that data to. Whether you want to keep that data on-prem on a local storage, a NAS, a direct connected hard drive, whatever that may be, or we have the option to send that back to a cloud, and whether it's one of the name brands, Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure Blob, IBM Cloud, or just any S3 compatible storage, we're able to send those or that data back into an object storage, meaning you don't have to worry about capacity planning for something as volatile as maybe OneDrive or SharePoint data. And then it comes to restore. We're super flexible in our restore options. We have tailored explorers for each of the applications that we're backing up to the server. For Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, you're able to not only restore that information back to its original location, but you can restore it to new locations, you can save it somewhere, you can export it to a drive. You can even email it to yourself or to another person that may have placed a ticket for data that they've been missing. With these explorers, we offer 25 different restore options. And again, they're very much tailored towards the type of data that you would want to restore. For an example, Exchange Online, we're able to export those files in an MSG or PST file, which are native formats that you would expect to find for this type of data. And again, with SharePoint, we see everything in documents and libraries. And if you're a SharePoint administrator, you can understand that those are the types of data that you expect to be protected in these environments. Now, to take a little closer look at what that software looks like from that diagram, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to our demo. And this is the Office 365 console. Now, you're able to add multiple organizations if you need to. So if you're a multi-tenancy environment, you're able to back up all of those organizations under one unit. And then under backup infrastructure, you can load balance your environment by adding multiple proxies if you prefer to have your data saved in separate places. You can have this entire server installed locally on your on-prem environment, or you have the option to store and spin up a machine in the cloud like AWS or Azure. Anything that you're able to spin up a Windows machine, you can technically install the software and start using it on a cloud platform without having to have an on-premises footprint. And that takes us into the object storage repositories. We're able to send a block form of all of your data from the Microsoft Office 365 storage into the block storage for your preferred provider. Now, there is a local cache that is saved. This local cache is to help accelerate the types of restores and metadata for that file structure so that you're able to restore the objects that you need without having to query the entire object storage environment to get the data that you require. The jobs are also very flexible when it comes to configuration. You can choose to back up your entire organization, or you can break it down into your users' groups, which if you already have Office 365 groups set up for, say, IT administrators, your HR administrators, and your other departments, you could create jobs tailored to each of those groups and be able to drive down into whether or not you're backing up their email, OneDrive, or their SharePoint sites as well. Now from here, we're going to take a look at how easy this data can be to lose. And in my case, I've locally mapped my OneDrive so that I can access any of my files, be able to upload files instantaneously. And if I click here, I can see, well, that's the wrong file. The project improvement plan. This is something that I have on my environment. It's also in the cloud. I can access it on any of my devices. But what could happen is if something locally attacks this, it can destroy that data, and it almost instantaneously starts uploading those changes to your cloud. So once any type of process like that started to happen, you have no control over trying to get that data back. And we can even look from the Office 365 environment to see our OneDrive online to see that data. While it's easy to lose that data, you can also get that data back fairly quickly and in the way that you need it. And we'll see this load up here, which is loading from our local cache instead of from the object storage. Unless you do any type of advanced searching, you're able to spool the data that's in your backup from your local machine, wherever that is, on premises or in the cloud. And in this case, we'll take a look at that file, and we can see all of the dates and modified dates for these files have changed. I try to open my improvement plan. It's unreadable. So we'll come back over here and we'll do a full restore, and we'll go ahead and overwrite those items because we know they are now lost. And it should just take a couple moments, and almost instantly we should start seeing these files start to update from the OneDrive environment back to our machine here. And if we go into that folder, we can see these modified dates are starting to change back to the original modified dates, which is what we would want to see in this case. And we'll wait for our improvement plan, which is now back and in completely readable shape. So once this is finished, you're able to come in here, see all of the documents that were restored. And if you have any types of warnings or description of those files, you'd also see it here.
Awesome stuff. Great job. So kind of looking at, taking a look at the number of customers we have here, you know, we've got well over 10,000 customers for Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, 99,000 downloads of this product. You can see many different organizations that you probably recognize, large, small, many different industries. So certainly these are all companies that fundamentally understand the need for protecting this critical data. In addition, before we part ways, you know, we would suggest that you kind of look at this Office 365 backup solutions checklist as you're kind of looking at different vendors and trying to make the best decisions regarding this data protection, your data protection needs, looking at features, making sure you have the broad set of encompassing all the different various productivity tools within Office 365. Whether that's Teams, OneDrive for Business, having the restore options you need, flexibility and choice. Can you deploy on-premises and in the cloud? Can you utilize any storage target you want? Are there various lock-ins to, well, we know there are various lock-ins to certain providers who will actually force you into using their storage. So making sure that you have the flexibility, whether you want to use Azure Blob today or AWS S3 tomorrow, making sure that you have the flexibility. making sure that you adopt a solution that's innovative as well, gives you the simplicity, powerful features, and actually, implements their customers' feedback. Very, very important things. Karinne, you want to take us through the remainders?
Yeah, and it's important that your software can scale with your environment. Whether you are an SMB client that you don't want to install an entire physical machine just to back up a smaller environment, but you need the flexibility for when you do grow in the future to scale that out. And we offer that with our backup proxies. Whether you want your entire server to be a single install, you're under 100 users, you could have a single proxy in your environment all the way up to 200,000 users where you're wanting to back up over multiple proxies and over multiple centralized servers for parts of your organization. We're able to scale with the software. And the integrations, not just integrating with the on-premises storage, but being S3 compatible and giving you that flexibility to provide a place where you could have a large ecosystem and being able to be in a hybrid style of environment. That brings us to the breadth of service. The breadth of service means that you're not just offering a singleized product where we're only allowed to do one feature, but we have an entire platform of features that cover your cloud, physical, and virtual infrastructures and allow you to seamlessly move across each of them with our portable backup files.
And we've got a few takeaways for you folks here. So read up or share to kind of help you further navigate this Office 365 data protection market. We have this ebook we worked on with Wiley, Office 365 Backup for Dummies. We highly recommend this as your go-to guide as you're navigating and exploring and evaluating backup vendors. So feel free to download that there. You could even Google Office 365 Backup for Dummies, and you would certainly find this book. It's the only book in the market. Also, see for yourself. So take the free trial, free for 30 days. No feature limitations at all. You can get the full product free for 30 days. And of course, Karinne also mentioned the community edition. If you have up to 10 users or 1 terabyte of SharePoint data, a smaller organization, you could certainly use this completely free as well. And from there, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for Q&A. So we thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Galactic Collaboration Summit. Join the community and meet in-person world-class Microsoft and MVP speakers this autumn in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, Germany, with 15 full-day tutorials and over 150 Microsoft 365 and Azure sessions at the combined European Collaboration Summit and European Cloud Summit from 26 to 28 October 2020. Community rocks.